Before she was the most hated woman in China, before she was reduced to a whisper, people didn't dare call her by name. In official circles and public conversation, she was only referred to as that woman, like she was Voldemort in heels. And 3 drops of water. That cryptic nickname pulled from the Chinese character Jiang in her surname, which contains the radical for water, 3 little strokes. It was a sly way to talk about her without saying her name, because back then, saying her name too loud might get you disappeared. She was born in 1914 as Li Shuming in Shandong, and she started life in Scandal's shadow. Her mother was a concubine, and her father eventually walked out on both of them. Childhood was a montage of trauma, domestic abuse, poverty, bullying, and endless moving between indifferent relatives. Her mother later worked as a servant, likely in contexts that blurred the lines with prostitution. All of it was shame Jiangqing would spend her life trying to erase, with one all-consuming goal: to never be humiliated again. By her 20s, she reinvented herself as an actress under the stage name Lan Ping. She wasn't just chasing stardom, she was clawing her way out of obscurity. She studied drama, performed in leftist theater troupes, even dared to dream of Hollywood stardom. She once said she wanted to be the next Greta Garbo, but the stage never truly embraced her. Critics called her mediocre, directors called her difficult. Her reputation soured, and roles vanished. Her love life? Oh, it absolutely raised eyebrows, and not just a little. In early 20th century China, especially in conservative circles, a woman with multiple partners or marriages was already scandalous. But an actress doing it? That was the ultimate cocktail of drama, rebellion, and societal judgment. She married playwright Tang Na, but it was short-lived. Before and after, she had rumored relationships with influential men in the arts and political spheres, fueling whispers that she was more ambitious than talented. Then came the pivot from stage to revolution. She joined the Communist Party, performing in revolutionary plays. And that's where she met Mao Zedong. He was already the revolutionary icon. Mao liked women who were bold, intelligent, and fiery, and Jiangqing hit all 3 in buckets. She wasn't shy, she spoke her mind, and she knew how to captivate an audience, on stage and off. He was smitten. She was 24 years his junior, sharp-tongued, politically ambitious, and determined to never be overlooked again. They married in 1938, but the party didn't exactly throw confetti. Mao's comrades were suspicious. She had too much history, too much baggage, and way too much ambition for their taste. So what did they do? They muzzled her. For decades, she was hidden behind Mao, referred to in official documents only as his wife. Then came the Cultural Revolution, a 10-year political firestorm Mao Zedong unleashed in 1966, partly to revive his slipping authority after the catastrophic Great Leap Forward. On paper, it was a crusade to cleanse China of capitalist, traditional, and counter-revolutionary elements. In reality, it was a purge dressed up as a moral mission. Mao rallied China's youth into militant squads known as the Red Guards, teenagers with armbands and unchecked power. Backed by Mao's blessing, they stormed schools, ransacked homes, and humiliated class enemies in the streets. Professors, landlords, intellectuals, even party veterans, no one was safe. One day, you might be a respected teacher. The next, you're paraded through town with a dunce cap and sent to dig ditches in the countryside. And in the middle of this chaos, Jiangqing stepped into the spotlight and lit the match. Let's be clear, she wasn't just echoing Mao. She was his cultural enforcer, the self-styled high priestess of revolutionary purity. She spearheaded campaigns to purge film, theater, literature, music, anything deemed impure or politically suspect. And while she wrapped it in ideology, much of it was deeply personal. Jiang wasn't just targeting ideological threats, she was hunting old enemies. Former critics, rivals from her acting days, people who once rolled their eyes at her ambitions. They all found themselves on blacklists, in prison cells, or worse. China's rich, ancient cultural heritage, she shredded it. Classical operas were banned. Traditional art was torched. She promoted a handful of rigid, state-approved model works, the only performances allowed to exist. Under the banner of revolution, she turned China's cultural stage into her own revenge play. Was it all for Mao's vision? Partly. But for Jiangqing, it was also vengeance. Years of being dismissed, mocked, silenced, she weaponized every slight, every insult, and carved her legacy into history with fear. And let's talk Zhou Enlai. The calm, diplomatic premier. The one who tried to moderate the chaos. Their rivalry. Cold War in high heels. Zhou saw her as reckless and dangerous. She saw him as weak and condescending. The tension between them shaped high-level politics, and her determination to dominate them. But her reign wasn't built to last. When Mao died in 1976, the party needed a cleanup crew. They couldn't throw Mao under the bus. So, they picked the perfect scapegoats, the Gang of Four. Jiang Qing, front and center. She was arrested and thrown into the spotlight one last time, this time in a nationally televised trial watched by millions. The whole country tuned in. And Jiang? She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. Dressed in black, chin high, she delivered her final act with the flair of a seasoned performer. Because to Jiang Qing, life had always been part revolution, part theater. She stood up and declared, "I was Chairman Mao's dog. When he told me to bite, I bit. No apologies, no remorse, no rewriting the script. Just one final reminder that Mao was the director, and she was the leading lady who did exactly what the role demanded." She refused to plead for mercy, refused to bow, refused to play the victim. Sentenced to death, later commuted to life imprisonment. She spent her final years isolated and battling cancer. And in 1991, alone in a hospital bathroom, Jiang Qing tied a piece of curtain cloth into a noose and ended her story on her own terms. Her final note? "I am still Chairman Mao's student." It read like the last line of a tragedy she'd been rehearsing her entire life. So yes, the Cultural Revolution was Mao's script. Jiang Qing, she starred in it. And when the curtain fell, she was the one left standing on stage to take the final bow and the blame. Was she ruthless? Absolutely. But was she also the product of rejection, erasure, and misogyny so baked into her world that vengeance became her only currency? Also yes. That's why people still whispered her name in fear. That woman. Why they scribbled her nickname, 3 Drops of Water. Because for decades, Jiang Qing didn't just wield power, she embodied it. The dangerous cocktail of unchecked authority, wounded pride, and one woman's lifelong vengeance and ambition that haunted a nation.